We have with us tonight Bob DuBois, presenting our amazing Dragonflies and Damselflies. He's going to describe the biology and ecology of odonates. Is that correct? Pronunciation. Bob recently founded the Wisconsin Dragonfly Society. He's published the field guides Damselflies of the Northwoods and Dragonflies and Damselflies of the Rocky Mountains. He's authored nearly 36 scientific research articles on topics related to the management, protection, and ecology of Odonata and Aquatic Hemiptera, and stream trout fisheries. He's worked with the DNR since 1983. Would you join me in welcoming Bob DuBois?
Thank you very much. Yeah, sure. Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's exciting for me to be here because it means a new dragonfly season has started. And, I don't know about you, but it seems like the winters get longer every year.
Yes.
Wow.
These other lights out?
Yes.
See that pretty good? Okay, so I'm here tonight to entertain you, of course, but I also have a little bit of an agenda. We have a new Dragonfly Society in Wisconsin, and it's been growing, and it's a really cool thing. It's a fun thing. We do a lot of things. We have meetings. We have outings, different places, kind of like a birding trip sort of thing. We put out a newsletter. We have a website. We have a Facebook groups page that gets quite a bit of traffic. And somebody here is actually on it once in a while. And do you enjoy it, Roger?
I love it.
There you have it. You love it. So you can take your little point-and-shoot camera and take a photograph of whatever dragonfly or damselfly you see in your yard, and you know, make a stab at an identification. Don't just go, here, tell me what this is, but say, hey, I think this is a 12 spotted skimmer or something. Post it, and you get lots of gentle feedback. And it's really been cool. It's really been cool. I mean, when I started doing citizen science stuff with dragonflies like 15 years ago, for me to teach people how to identify them was a really laborious process. They would have to send me specimens in the mail. Sometimes I get shoe boxes full of dead dragonflies, you know, and try to give people feedback on the phone or through email or whatever. But now this Facebook groups page is just fantastic. People are teaching each other. Great.
Yes, and people can hear you in the back.
Oh yeah, can you folks hear me in the back?
Good. Yeah,
Okay,
very good.
great, thank you.
Remember to speak up.
Okay, so tonight we're going to see mostly a PowerPoint, so we'll get through almost half of it, and then we'll take a break, get up, and I've got a little bit of display stuff in the back, so I'll go back there during our little break time. So do you have like snacks and stuff? Okay. So that's what we'll do then, and I'll be back there to answer any questions about the display items. I have some brochures for our new society, but I don't know if I have enough to go around. I don't even know if there's any still back there or not, because I see some folks have them. Yeah, they look kind of like this. Anyway, grab one if you like back there. Otherwise, just ask me for like my email, and I will email you one as soon as I'm in the office. So, and please, if you have any questions, just bark them right out. This is pretty informal, so I want folks to learn, so if anything's not 100% clear, just let me know. So they really are, they are amazing critters. Have you seen any this year yet?
Yeah.
Most of you? Yeah, they've been emerging just to beat the band the last week or so. And even today there was a lot of dragonflies emerging in a couple of lakes that I went to, even though it was cold and overcast, and they'd emerged and they were too cold to really fly for a while, but they were still coming out. So they're a lot of fun. The first question I always get asked is, what's the difference between dragonflies and damselflies? And they belong to the same scientific order of insects. So they're very closely related, and they do a lot of the same things, and they have almost all of the same body parts. They look a little bit different. Dragonflies have a more robust body, damselflies more slender. Damselflies, the head is kind of like a hammerhead shark. The eyes are way out at the ends of the head, whereas dragonflies have more of a globe-shaped head and eyes cover a whole lot of the head surface. When they're perched, damselflies usually hold their wings together over their back. Dragonflies, when they're mature, they don't do that. They hold them out, almost like a little airplane sort of, drooped a little bit very often, but not over the back. And damselflies are very good flyers, but they're not as strong, powerful flyers as dragonflies are. Dragonflies can fly up to 35, 40 miles an hour. So they've got that blazing speed. They can migrate long distances. Damselflies are more about precise, quick movements, gleaning prey off of stems of plants and that sort of thing, but not the same sort of powerful flight. I like to start my discussion about their biology by just kind of focusing on this photograph. And when I first saw this thing about 20 years ago, I must tell you, I had no idea what was going on with this. But does anybody have a guess as to what's going on here? We've got a perfectly good female stream bluet here, and something there. What do you think might be happening there?
Part of the male.
Usually I don't get the right answer right off the bat, but
Where the eggs are laid from?
well, it has to do with mating. It has to do with mating. So let's sort of unravel this story a little bit. Isn't this great? This is just like being back in science class. It is wonderful. All I really want you to know is that a dragonfly is built like other insects. You've got 6 legs, 2 pairs of wings, a powerful thorax full of flight muscles, big head, compound eyes, sea great, and a long abdomen with 10 segments. Now, male dragonflies have claspers at the end of their abdomen that they use to grab onto the female with, either the back of the head or on top of her thorax here. They also have some secondary reproductive organs right here at the complete other end of the abdomen, close to the thorax. So for a male dragonfly, when he's going to mate, he has to first transfer his sperm, which gets produced back here on segment 9, all the way over to here. So he has to mate sort of a circle kind of thing before he's ready to mate. After he does that, now he is ready to mate. Here's how this looks on a real critter. So this is what the claspers look like for grabbing. And this is that secondary reproductive organ that's a toolkit of reproductive parts. No other insect has anything quite like it. So now, when dragonflies mate, the male, who has already transferred his sperm, remember, he'll grab a female by the back of the head. And if she's receptive, then she will curve around and meet her segment 9, where her eggs are produced, with his segment 2, which is now where he's put his sperm after transferring. Is it getting hot in here? I've been talking about sex for a long time. So anyway, if she's receptive, she does that, and they form this wheel-shaped configuration. Has anybody ever seen this? Even when they're flying around, they can fly around like this. So when they're flying around, the male is the only one whose wings are moving, but he can support all that weight. And I was once in a workboat with a 25 horsepower motor, and we were trying to chase a pair of Prince Basket-tails in wheel, and they just took off and left us in the dust. I don't know how fast they were going, but it was way faster than we could go, with just the male doing all the work. Very, very powerful flyers. So this is how it looks in real life. This is a pair of autumn meadowhawks. The male is bright red. That's typical for dragonflies, that the male is more colorful than the female, little bit drabber coloration. And they may be in this position for anywhere from just 3 seconds on the short end to as long as 7 hours on the long end for some damselflies. So the real long ones, what they're doing is the male is just trying to monopolize the female so no other males can mate with her during that period when she's should be available. Damselflies do exactly the same thing. Same parts, same places. Here, can you see that it's almost kind of a heart-shaped configuration? No, I can't either. So now, after they're done mating, the male will very often stay attached. Why do you think he might do that? Yeah, it's a guarding thing. He's guarding her, and he's doing it with contact, so we call that contact guarding. The males don't always guard in a contact way, but most species do guard. So he may fly off a little bit and chase off other males while she's trying to lay her eggs. So she's ready to lay eggs right away, right after mating. And that may be into the water like here, it could be into mud. Damselflies lay their eggs into plant material. So it could be on certain substrates like plants or something. So there's a lot of different strategies. Some species will lay their eggs up on a bank out of the water where the next rain is going to wash the eggs in. A lot of different strategies. So here's a group of lyre-tipped spreadlings. The males are more greenish with a little bit of gray. The female's a little bit more yellowish here. And the males are guarding in a contact position. And the female is, you can see it here pretty clearly, I think. There's a little knife-like tool that's part of her egg-laying device. So we call that egg-laying device an ovipositor. And part of that is this little knife-like tool. She makes a slit into the plant material and puts anywhere from 1 to 6 eggs in there, moves a little bit and does it again, moves a little bit and does it again. So when you see a swath like this here, this is where a pair has spent some time and laid a bunch of eggs, moved a little bit, and so on and so forth. Sometimes a favored stem will get used so much it actually dies. It can get that heavily used by females laying eggs. This is a communal egg-laying party for stream bluets and a violet dancer. This is a violet dancer, male and female here. The rest are stream bluets. The males are guarding in that contact position. We often call that a sentinel position because they're just sort of up here, you know, looking around, not doing anything else. But isn't that amazing that their claspers at the tip of the abdomen are so strong that they can just lock in to the top of her thorax, and that skinny little abdomen is rigid enough to just support them like this without having to move their wings at all. They're not flying at all when they're doing this. Obviously, this puts them in a little bit of a precarious position. So now we know what probably happened. The male was guarding in a sentinel position, and maybe a bird came along or something and grabbed him, and something had to give, and it turned out to be segment 5. So now, she can't get rid of this right away, and this could stay here for a while, and while it's there, she can't mate with any other males because they have to grab onto that very particular spot. So, flying adults are only part of the story. Damselflies and dragonflies spend most of their lives underwater as nymphs, so up to about 90% of their life or more is spent underwater crawling around as nymphs. This is a mature nymph, and we know that because these wing pads here are very long. So when the nymph is young, these wing pads are just little teeny buds. And each time it molts, the wing pads get a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. So they go through, on average, about a dozen molts. And when they finally get into that last instar, that last stadium, this length here is as long as the head is wide or longer. So you can tell if a nymph's ready to emerge. So, for example, I picked some nymphs in the back that I can give out at the end of the night, so anybody who wants can take one home, have it emerge within a few days. How do I know that? Because the wing pads are so long, and they're also starting to swell up, which is a sign that they're going to emerge really, really soon. Nymphs are unique, just as the adults are. They've got this hinged labium thing that's unique among insects. So this thing is like my arm, kind of tucked in under the head, and when they're going to feed, they extend it out to grab onto a prey item with these raptorial claws here, hooks, and then bring it back in. And so they do this in about 1/100th of a second. So with my 61-year-old eyes, when I'm dropping my little worms into the aquarium to feed my nymphs, I can just see a blur as they grab that thing and bring it in. Very, very fast. So now, our nymph has gone through its 12 or so molts. Yep.
Is that multiple years? Can they be, is that an annual
Yes.
thing, or?
So the question is, does that take multiple years? And for many species, it does. Many of our species have a 1-year life cycle, so they're done in just 1 year, but many have a 2-year life cycle. Both of those are common. Some have a 3 or a 4-year life cycle. Those are less common. It's the bigger species that do that. But 1 or 2 years is average.
Want to explain the use of the word nymph?
Okay, some people use the term, the question was about my use of the word nymph for the underwater stage. Some people use the term larva, some people use the term naiad. For me, it's sort of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. There are people that would die defending what they believe to be the correct view. My view is I'm a pacifist. I think we should all get along. And if you want to call it a larva, that's just great, you know. There are reasons why people call it nymphs, but it would take me too long to explain all that stuff. So anyway, about 3 days before our nymph is going to emerge, it changes, incredibly enough, inside into what we call a ferrate adult. So the new adult has formed inside, and it's imprisoned within this rigid chitinous exoskeleton here. And it's just waiting for the right time to come out of the water and emerge. So it will move near the edge of the water, and it will get like part of the way out, and its breathing shifts over from rectal breathing that the nymph does to using spiracles, which is what the adult does. So it crawls out onto an appropriate emergence perch, could be a rock, could be twig, blade of grass, anything around the edge of a water body, and then the head, the exoskeleton splits crossways on the top of the head, long ways across the top of the back, and that new adult starts to force its way out. And this is the same species about 30 minutes later. So this thing right now has just come out. It's very soft-bodied. It can't fly yet. The wings are not boom out like this yet, which happens instantaneously when it's ready to fly. The wings will just go from being here to boom, and then they'll shiver for a while, and off she goes. But right now, it's soft-bodied, can't get away from predators, so that's why dragonflies emerge in huge numbers sometimes, like we're seeing right now with all the basket tails that are emerging all over the place around our ponds. Some of those get through the gauntlet of predators. So anything around the water body will eat these, and then the first flight is fluttery and weak, so birds gorge on them as well. And this is what a mature adult of that species looks like, with its full coloration and so forth. So, an incredible change from that to this in a few days. So here's sort of just a snapshot of how that process works. The nymph crawls up, comes out, hangs for a while. He'll hang like this for about 20 minutes, and that's so that the legs harden up enough that he can use them. Then he'll start doing like push-ups until he can grab onto his own exuvia or the stem, pull the abdomen out, gulp air. That causes the abdomen to extend, the wings unfurl as insect blood, hemolymph gets pumped through them, and then at this stage, he's about ready to fly. So to go from here to here, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the size of the species. Now, when the adult flies off, he leaves that cast skin behind, that exoskeleton behind, the exuvia. Super useful for those of us that study dragonflies, because we know now when we find one of those that this species was produced right there at the bottom of that planet. When you see an adult flying somewhere, that could have come from miles away. So these are super useful for us for surveys. rearing nymphs indoors is a blast. And this is just sort of a pictorial illustration of what I was saying earlier. If the wing pads are long, as long or longer than the head is wide, then you know it's a mature nymph. If you collect a nymph like that, it will emerge pretty soon. You don't have to feed it. You can just put it in an aquarium with a little water or a cup with a little water, screening on top, an emergence perch for it to crawl out onto, and it will do that without being fed. You made it. You made it through the first half, people. All right, let's take a break. Any questions about what we just saw? Birds are a huge predator. When they're fully formed in the adult stage, birds are the main predator. When they're in that tendril stage, they just come out and they're still down in the grass, then ants get a lot of them, spiders get a lot of them, shrews get a lot of them. Once they're flying, they're pretty much. Yes?
What happens after the female lays the eggs inside the plant stem?
Yeah. Well, those species generally overwinter in the egg stage. A lot of them do, like the spread wings that you saw there. So when that becomes wetted in the spring, that's a clue for the eggs to hatch. Sometimes the egg will hatch while the stem is still upright, and so the first molt is into what we call a pro-nymph, and that only lasts a few seconds, but that pro-nymph will actually just bop right out of the stem. Looks like he's just popping right out of the stem, and he almost immediately goes into the first larval instar after that.
So they're not eating plant materials?
No, they're not eating plant material. While they're in there, they get preyed on by, they get parasitized by small wasps sometimes, pretty often. Okay, let's take a little bit of a break. So after the break, so this was the life history part of things, just so you kind of know how the life cycle works a little bit. Afterward, we're going to look at actual photos of dragonflies and how to identify them. So the next section, I stuck in more slides actually than I usually do, because I really wanted to show folks that are really interested the diversity of these critters up here. Usually I don't. I just flash through it really fast because I don't want to bore them. But I'd like to connect with people that have a little bit more than average interest, try to get them into our society, get them connected a little bit with our group. So I'm going to show a few more slides than I usually do. If that's too much for you and you need to get up and walk around outside, please do. It won't hurt my feelings at all. I know I'm fire hosing you. There's too much information. I know that. So if you need to get up.
Informed audience, and we're going to be interested, so go for it.
We're going to be interested in kill us, right? All right, I like that. Okay, so for identifying odonates, it's probably kind of like birding. You get better at it with time, and when you begin to get quite good at it, you can tell what things are even from a distance by how they fly and so on and so forth. But early on, you really need to net some things to examine small body parts close up, like with a hand lens, like I have around my neck. This is part of my uniform that I'm always carrying around. No. It would make me feel more complete. Okay. So anyway, these claspers at the tip of the abdomen are hugely important in identifying a lot of dragonflies and damselflies, the shapes of these things, either in side view usually or top-down view. So field guides will show those in either side view or top view, depending on what's the best angle to identify that species. So for dragonflies and damselflies, the parts, there's a top one and a bottom one for both groups, but they're actually different body parts. Paraprox on the bottom for both, but dragonflies, it's an epiproct up here. For damselflies, it's Circe up there. But it looks similar in side view, and it functions the same as a clasper type of thing. Sometimes this arrangement here is useful for identification. A lot of times wing venation is useful. Lots of things can be useful. But sometimes it requires you to net stuff to look it up close. if you really want to know what everything is, I mean, most people would probably be perfectly happy never netting one and just watching them and enjoying them, and that's absolutely great. But if you're like me, who has to know what everything is, then you're going to want to net some.
Boy, am I glad bird genitalia are not visible. That would be the least exciting thing to look at.
That is so cool. I have never heard that in a dragon.
This may sound kind of weird, but
Weirder than that?
probably not, you know. I would never have thought of picking one up, just because looking at them, my first thought would be, wow, they're big, and I wonder if they bite.
Yeah. The big ones can try to bite. I mean, if you're gentle with them, usually they won't even really try. But the big ones can try, but it doesn't hurt enough, even with our biggest species, to hurt an adult. You know, if you were surprised by it and didn't know what was happening, you might go, ooh, you know, but it really isn't painful. Yeah. Field guides are getting better all the time. Shamelessly, I'm showing you a couple of mine here. But, you know, even 10 years ago, there really wasn't too much for field guides, but they're getting better, they're getting better, they're getting better, so it's getting easier and easier to identify them. First family, so we've got 9 families of dragonflies and damselflies in central Wisconsin. 3 families of damselflies, 6 dragonflies. And I'm going to blast you through all 9 of those families, show you a couple individuals in each one of all 9 of those families. So there's going to be quite a few slides here. But I just want to show you the color diversity, the pattern diversity, size diversity, shape diversity, just how much incredible diversity there is out there. The first group are the broad-winged damsels, and these love rivers and streams. This one here likes bigger rivers. This one here, big rivers and smaller streams. We've got another species here where the wings are all black. It's called an ebony jewel wing. So any of you that like to be along streams or rivers, have anybody seen these? Sure. They're really common. Look at that metallic iridescence on the body. You know, depending on how the sun hits it, it could look green, it could look bluish, but really beautiful. And these guys have showy displays for attracting mates and so forth, which is really amazing to see. Next family I'm going to show you are the pond damsels. The broad-winged ones you just saw, we only have 3 species up here. Pond damsels, we've got about 31 or 2 species here in central Wisconsin. They come in all sorts of different colors and sizes, and they're in all sorts of different habitats. For this particular species, these little black marks here, set inside this powder blue abdomen tip, are diagnostic. This is an eastern fortail. We've got a lot of species of what we call bluets. Some people call them black and blue boys, bluets. Blue and black rings, some more black, some less black. And those are all identifiable if you net them and look at the tip of the abdomen with a hand lens. They're fascinating critters. Also in the pond damsel family are the sprites. These guys are really small, about an inch long or so. This is a metallic green coloration, powder blue below. You know, when I take folks out in the field and show them their first sprite, they usually go, wow, that's cute, or you know, something like that. They're just really attractive little critters. So for the pond damsels, this is what field guides would show you. They would say, you know, notice the difference of this round-shaped cerci versus that one that's got like that cut, it's longer and it's got like a cutout in the bottom. That sort of thing is what the field guides would direct you to, that you'd be looking at, you know, with your hand lens. Without doing that, a lot of them you can't tell them apart. By looking at the tip of the abdomen, they may be different as night and day, but you know, superficially they look identical. A number of species do. The last group of damselflies are the spreadwings, and we've got 11 species in Wisconsin, probably all of them in the central part of the state here. really cool. They're not particularly colorful. They have a lot of this bluish gray, whitish prunescence, which is a waxy substance that gets exuded out of the cuticle. Different places on the body here too. Dark color often. The eyes may be beautiful blue, however. But these will make use of temporary ponds by laying their eggs into plant material so they overwinter in the egg stage. So that the nymph doesn't need water to be there all the time. So that's another cool strategy that dragonflies and damselflies do. They can make use of temporary water bodies. And this is what the field guides would direct you to, looking down in top view of the tip of the abdomen. They'd say, you know, notice that these paraprocs are lyre-shaped or S-shaped versus these are straight, that sort of thing. Yes?
Do you have any special mouth parts or anything for slicing, for making the openings to put their eggs in? Any adaptations for that?
For putting their eggs in plant material?
Yeah, they just take a bite out of it.
No. Part of the female's ovipositor has a knife-like projection. Yeah. You must have missed that slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could go there really quick. But part of her ovipositor has that knife-shaped thing, and she puts an egg or two, or up to 6 in each slit, and moves on. So that was the damselflies. 3 families of damselflies: pond damsels, spreadwings, and broadwing damsels. So now on to the dragonflies. 6 families. The first one I'm showing you here are the darners. These are the big, strong flying ones that often have a lot of blue on them. The mosaic darners, or the blue darners in the genus Echna, all have this sort of spotting on the abdomen. You can look at various things to identify them. One is the shape of this stripe here is very important. You can often see it when they're perched or even flying sometime. Or you can freeze it with a good camera shot like this. And if you see this little cutout here and you don't see a big black stripe across the face, you know that's a Canada darner. Again, the shape of the claspers is diagnostic for a lot of species too. These guys are strong, powerful flyers. Pretty big. So here's a species that has just the straight pale side stripe instead of the cutout like the previous one had. And this is our lord and master of June, Anax junius, the common green darner, the first dragonfly typically that we see every year. They're migratory, so they get up here in April. There's also a resident component to their population. And they like shallow, fishless water bodies where they can grow really fast. And so they can go from egg to adult ready to fly away and migrate in as short as 6 weeks. Take advantage of those little temporary ponds that are food rich and don't have much predators and just blast through all their instars. They're a very impressive animal. Not quite as impressive as a dragon hunter though. And this dragon hunter has just grabbed a common green darner, which is a big critter. And this really gives new meaning to the phrase "heads will roll." You can just sort of imagine that head is sort of. And this is what they look like when they're mating. Swamp darner is a really big insect. They're pretty uncommon. These darker areas are called pseudopupils, where the ommatidia, those little facets, are particularly small and clustered and densely populated. So a dragonfly eye like this can have up to 30,000 of those little platelets, ommatidia. So they've got great vision. We think the best vision in the insect world. So a dragonfly like this can be flying along at top speed, maybe 30 miles an hour, let's say, see a prey item the size of a mosquito 60 feet away and just home right in on it and zap it, nail it. The next family are the clubtails, and they get their name from a widening that the males of many species have at the tip of the abdomen, sort of like a club. And we've got about 20 species in this part of Wisconsin, and they love rivers, and they're just tons of fun. A lot of people love clubtails more than any other group. Really fun to watch. try to find, they can spend a lot of their time flying over the middle of rivers or up in the trees, so they can be kind of elusive in that way. But they're really, really beautiful and fun. This is a horned clubtail, beautiful blue eyes on this one. This is a female. So this little thing right here on top of her head is diagnostic for this species. This is a male here, and you probably can't see it too much, but the claspers are really big and long, and that's how it gets its name of horned clubtail. This is a rusty snaketail. The snaketails are a genus of dragonflies that like rivers that are clean and well oxygenated. So these are almost like the trout of the dragonfly world. They're pretty good indicators of decent water quality for most of the species of them. And there are two new snaketails that have been named to science since 1993 from specimens in Wisconsin. So not just new state record, but new to science, two different species from Wisconsin. So we are clubtail rich in Wisconsin. When I did my book on dragonflies and damselflies of the Rocky Mountains, and I could only find 5 clubtails, I was like, what, you know? Because I was spoiled, but we're living in a clubtail rich part of the world. So we need to take advantage of that. This is the legendary dragon hunter. Very big, very powerful. Look at the size of this thorax here. At least a third of the weight of the entire insect is just the flight musculature to move these wings. And here's a dragon hunter taking down another big dragonfly, a Swiffer cruiser. That was the clubtails. The next family are the spiketails. These are beautiful. Black and yellow, large, green eyes, very, very striking. They like streams, usually small streams. So particularly this one here, the arrowhead spiketail, you find it in teeny weeny little seeps that you can barely work with the edge of your net. And these things are in there. Just marvelous. The females are very, very, very long ovipositors, so they can poke it down in the mud, lay their eggs down into the mud. The fourth family are the cruisers. The cruisers are easy to identify because they have a single slanted pale stripe on the side of the thorax. Dragonflies either don't have anything there at all, or they have spots, or they have 2 stripes. But one stripe tells you it's a cruiser. These have very, very, very long legs, and the nymphs almost look like big spiders. The legs are so long. They're big, and they fly just about anywhere. So lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, you name it. The fifth family, the second to last family we're going to see tonight, are the emeralds. So these are a lot of people's favorites. The eyes are often in a lot of species just this fluorescent bright green. It's just crazy. It looks like there must be some sort of a fluorescent light bulb inside the head or something to have that kind of color. A lot of them are sort of a dark mahogany brown. So there's sort of an understated elegance, I guess. Wide variety of habitats. What we have in the cups over there is a common basket tail. They're an emerald. The basket tails are emeralds. This is our biggest emerald, the Prince basket tail. It's got 3 spots on each wing. Now we get to the somatochlores. The somatochlores are a real special group. They are rare, they're elusive, they're fast, they're challenging in every way you can possibly imagine, to the point that some dragonfly enthusiasts focus on this group to the exclusion of almost everything else. So we have somatochlorists that are looking for these guys all the time. You may have heard of the Heinz emerald, which is the only federally endangered dragonfly in North America. That's a species of somatochlora. Most of them are rare, reclusive, hard to find, hard to nail down their breeding habitats, hard to know what areas you need to protect them, because it's hard to find their nymphs. So these guys are just really special. This is what a Heinz emerald looks like, and the Heinz emerald is easy to distinguish by the shape of the claspers again, where the top one kind of curved down about like that. No other emerald is quite exactly like that. And you can see it in flight as well. So they're big, some yellow on the thorax, the beautiful bright green eyes. And these need a very particular kind of habitat, which is sheet flow fens over dolomite bedrock substrates. So that's why they're listed as endangered, is people are concerned that that kind of habitat is at risk. And any animal is only as strong as its habitat is protected, right? I mean, if the habitat's gone, it's gone. So that's why the Heinz emerald is endangered. Shadow dragons are cool beyond belief. These are a genus of large river species. So the Wisconsin River is one of the best places I've ever seen for shadow dragons. We have both species that we have in Wisconsin, the Stygian and the Smoky, in the Wisconsin River. These guys come out for about a half an hour at dusk, and that's it. You'll never see them any other time. Half an hour at dusk. So go to the Wisconsin River someplace where there's from some pretty heavy flow, right about at dusk, and just stand there and wait. And yes?
Some of these dragonflies are so large, I guess I'm wondering what kind of prey they can take. Can they eat horseflies, deerflies, bees, you know?
Yeah. They will take, you know, anything smaller than themselves, really. They feed on other insects that are smaller than themselves. Some are more prone to take bigger prey than others. Like a dragon hunter likes to go after dragonflies almost as big as it is. A lot of our smaller dragonflies are perfectly happy just going after gnats and midges and mosquito-sized stuff, even though they're big enough that they could take something bigger than that.
Is it just catching it with its legs?
Yeah, yeah. So the legs are forward pointed on an adult dragonfly. An adult dragonfly can't really walk. It can perch, but it can't walk very well. The nymphs walk great, but once it emerges, it changes completely, and those legs are no longer suited for walking. So it's kind of like a flying net basket that it will use to trap prey, grab them with its mandibles, and use its legs in that process. And you can go online and Google this, you know, dragonfly catching prey in flight or something, and you'll see some slow motion video of how that actually happens. It's absolutely amazing to watch. So these guys are tons of fun. They fly about this far over the surface, and it's dusk now, and they're fast as bullets. So if you try and net them to know what they are, imagine the challenge involved with that. And the females are way faster than the males. So I got together with a good friend of mine, Ken Tennyson, a couple of years ago. He needed to net some females for a colleague in like New Mexico or something who was doing a study on them. Bob, you got to help me net some females. Well, Ken's really, really good with a net. I'm like, so-so. So we're out there at dusk, and it's like trying to net a bullet. When these females would lay their eggs, so they're flying like this far over the surface, and she just dip down a little bit, drop a couple of eggs off, and go. But it's so fast, it looks like you're skipping a stone. I mean, that has just boom. And I'm like, I'm supposed to try to net this in the dark? So Ken netted about 8 in a row. 8 in a row. And you know, every time I swung, he's like, trying to be encouraging. Oh, Bob, almost. Oh, Bob, so close. Take your net, Bob. I think he's in there. I think he's in there. Bob, you got a hole in your net or what? Man. Some people just don't know what it was like, you know? Okay. The Williamsonians are wonderful. These are bog obligate little gems of emeralds. They need sphagnum bog habitats, bogs or fens. There's 2 species in Wisconsin. They look fairly similar, except the rarer species has this kind of ring all the way down the abdomen, and they're orange instead of white. So the ebony bog honder's got like 2 clear rings. Sometimes you can see a third one here. The ring bog honor, orange rings all down the abdomen. Pretty rare. We used to think they were very, very rare until we surveyed more and more for them and found them in more and more bogs. But they need to be protected because people will go into bogs to get the sphagnum out, which they dry out, mom and pop operations to sell because it's good for horticultural purposes. So it's important for us to figure out what parts of the bogs are particularly useful for these critters and make sure those areas get protected. The last family I'm going to show you tonight are the skimmers. The skimmers are a big family. In this part of the state, probably 30, 32 species, something like that. Come in all sorts of sizes, shapes, and colors. They tend to perch a lot. They tend to be found around the edges of water bodies. They tend to be marked pretty strikingly, so they're great subjects for photography. This is an eastern pondhawk. This is a particularly ferocious species. You know, we were talking earlier about some dragonflies just liking to go after big stuff. This is a medium-sized dragonfly, but it goes after prey almost as big as it is pretty routinely. Really ferocious. But just look at the blues and green coloration. Just such a pleasing color combination on these guys. And little white cerci at the tip of the abdomen, completely unmistakable. Certainly don't need to net that to know what it is. 12 spotted skimmers are really showy. They're big. Who's seen the 12 spotted skimmer before? Yeah. I mean, they're hard to miss. I remember one day being at a DNR meeting, we decided to hold it outdoors, so we're sitting on a bunch of picnic tables. Somebody's trying to talk to us about something. Tree right over us. One of these landed on a low-hanging branch, about 4 or 5 feet above all of us, and everybody is just like this, like 30 heads going like this. Well, this is a common whitetail, and I just put this in to show that the wing patterns are the same on a common whitetail and a 12-spotted skimmer, but the line, the yellow line, is straight on this one, where here it's more like a zippered sort of thing. So that's another thing that a field guide would point out. This is the smallest dragonfly in North America, called an Elfin Skimmer, and it's another bog species, so it likes little bathtub-sized pools in sphagnum bogs. Wherever the habitat is right, you'll find this guy. So small, 1 inch long, when you watch one of these fly, you know, from this twig over here to this twig over here, it looks like it's winded going that far. But I did a survey out on the Apostle Islands in 2004, and I was on Michigan Island, and I found a little bog that had just exactly the right habitat for Elfin Skimmers, and I mentioned to the person that was with me, you know, this is the habitat for an Elfin Skimmer. And about 5 minutes later, they caught one, and here it is. So that was 7 miles off the mainland. Wherever the habitat is, they'll find it somehow. They're good dispersers. The pennants are cool, really special. Calico pennant male, very brightly colored, red sort of heart-shaped markings on the abdomen, just strikingly marked wings. Can't mistake it for anything else. Halloween pennants love to perch right on the tips in fields, open fields of vegetation. So if you're scanning, you know, a field for Savannah sparrows, how am I doing? Henslow's sparrow. You'll see these guys like little flags waving around right on the top of stems. We have 5 species of white faces in Wisconsin, and these have a bright white, porcelain white front of the face. Obviously, you can't see it in top view. You can't see it a lot of times in side view, so you have to have the kind of the right angle on it. But these are small, they're abundant, and the dock-tailed white faces are coming out now in big numbers. They're a very early emerging species. So these guys, again, until you really learned them well, the dock-tail you can't mistake because it's got a squarish yellow spot on segment 7. The other white faces are a little harder to identify. So when you're starting out, you'd be netting some of those and looking at the tip of the abdomen and so forth, matching that up with what's in your field guide. This is a crimson ringed white face. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful critter. And a very, very common insect here, the white-faced meadowhawk. So this is not a white-face. This is a different genus. It just happens to have a white face. But usually you can't see these too well, the white face in a side view. But this one just happened to turn around and look at the photographer right as he was clicking the shutter. So we got a great photo there. But isn't that red just amazing? How just saturated that is. So we've got a bunch of species of meadowhawks in Wisconsin. Some of them are tricky to tell apart. You've got to look at little parts with a hand lens. This one tends to have a lot of sort of a yellowish, orangish wash on the wings. But these will overwinter in the egg stage also, so these can take advantage of temporary habitats. Yeah?
Are these the ones that look at attack all the insects? When you drive down the edge of the field, you raise all these insects. I see these red ones, all these.
These are pretty small.
Yeah, but
Yeah, about like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they just seem to hawk around the car because I'm like stirring stuff up for them.
Yeah. Very, probably exactly what's happening. And you use the term hawking, and that's what we use when dragonflies are in swarms and they're feeding on insects. We refer to that as hawking. Spot-winged glider. The gliders are migratory. Look at his huge hind wing with all of this wing area back here. So these things can get up into the air currents and just go for miles and miles and miles. We know they migrate for thousands of miles. However far it is from the tip of India to Madagascar across the Indian Ocean, they make that journey. So these will land on ships out in the middle of the ocean. And again, about 30,000 of those little platelets here. Saddlebags are very much like gliders in that they have the huge hind wings, lots of surface area there, and they're also migratory. So, that was all the 9 families that we have. You didn't see every species or genus, obviously, but you saw representatives from all of the families that are around here. Question?
What are the particular ones that show up on NextRad, on the radar, they'll show up as migrating dragonflies? Is that a particular species that has that number, that size?
Yeah. The most common one would probably be a wandering glider. That's our strongest circumglobal migrant. The common green darner is very, very strong migrant also. Some are less strongly migratory. The saddlebags don't seem to go quite as far as the gliders do.
How far do they go? In this
Certainly hundreds of miles, probably 1,000 or more. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, a month ago we had a monarch butterfly as our topic, and it takes 4 generations to go from the summer to the winter.
Yeah.
But what can you help us about the migration of these?
Right.
Is it the same individuals that make the double trip?
No, the same individual doesn't make a double trip. One individual makes a trip from the south to the north, lays eggs. Those eggs hatch, that individual goes south. So it's 2 trips, a one-way trip each way.
And how many years?
Oh, they do this in weeks. The actual migration, they move about 60 miles a day as far as we can figure.
Okay, but the ones that come and lay eggs here, their nymphs take a whole year? Or
Sometimes, but very often, they'll go through all their instars in about 6 weeks. So it's very typical for our common green darners to show up in April, May, lay eggs, hatch. Those grow throughout the summer in a food-rich habitat with not very many predators to worry about. Those will come out that fall and go south that same year. That's, we think, is the typical thing. We find half-grown ones in the winter and so forth, so we know they don't all do that, but that seems to be the typical thing. What do we need to do with what we know about dragonflies? We need to protect them, and that means protecting their habitats primarily. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're a lot of fun to photograph. They're great teaching tools for kids. Kids love them. Get kids outdoors with nets and start teaching kids about dragonflies. They just love them. share what you know with others. It's kind of what I try to do. Obviously, we want to protect habitats first. That's the most important thing. But we can't give up on mitigation sites either. You know, we need to make sure that they're wisely done, mitigation ponds, so that there's not too much of slope. They put the right plants in for different species, whatever might be necessary. This photograph was taken by a friend one day after this particular pond was dug. So we've got like 15 pairs of autumn meadowhawks here laying eggs right away in a pond that was created literally yesterday. So they're super, super good at dispersing. They'll find the right habitat. If we can protect the habitats, they'll be there. So it's a captivating pastime. It's a challenge. It's a fun new challenge. A lot of birders are kind of getting into dragonflying a little bit. They're not switching over. They're just adding that as a value-added kind of way of appreciating nature. And pretty soon you'll find yourself, you know, secretary of our society and all that sort of stuff. This is important. Kids just love them, and we need to get kids outdoors, obviously, more. And it's a doorway to conservation action because people are not going to protect what they don't love, and they're not going to love what they don't know. So we have to get people outdoors and engaged with nature. So, you survived it. Yes.
I think it was on a TED Talk. There was a really good one on dragonflies, but the four wings they act individually, which makes them fly so well.
Yeah. They can move them like the two front ones together and the two rear ones out of sync with the front ones, and they can move them individually. So they can hover, they can go sideways, up, down, backwards. They're super flyers. Other questions? Yes?
Two quick questions. One, when you handle them, if you do net them and handle them, are they pretty robust? You're not going to harm them? And the second question is, do those spots on the front edge of their wings serve any known function?
Yeah. I'll answer the first question. The first question was about netting them and handling them and how robust they are to that sort of treatment. We routinely do it in the dragonfly world. And I know that's shocking to butterflyers or birders or lots of other folks who don't net stuff. But we need to identify them. But we've learned through like marking studies where, let's say we're studying territorial behavior around a pond, so we want to net a bunch of males and we want to put little marks on their wings with Sharpies and so forth. We find that netting them does not appear to affect their behavior. Now, every now and then when you're netting one, you might hit it with the rim of the net instead of having it go into the bag. So we estimate maybe 5% mortality or something like that through the netting process. But if you're careful, we believe you can net and release dragonflies and damselflies. Again, staying away from tenerals because they're more soft-bodied. But if you're doing the adults and you're careful, you can net, handle, release, and we believe that they're pretty robust to that. The other question was about spots on the wings, and I think you're referring to the stigmas. So sort of at the upper end near the tips. Those are little cells of like dried blood, basically, and we think they help stabilize the wings somehow, little areas of stabilization. Not really 100% sure what those do.
Do they communicate in any audible way?
No, we used to think dragonflies couldn't hear. Now we know that's not true. We used to think they couldn't smell. We know that's not true. We don't know that they communicate, but the nymphs may. Stonefly nymphs communicate, by rubbing legs and so on underwater, stridulations.
Do they avoid bats?
They've got really good avoidance behavior at stuff that's coming on them straight on. I don't know how quick they would be as far as getting away from bats. But if you're trying to net them, for example, if I'm standing on a shoreline and I've got a net and they're coming along this way, I don't want to be trying to net them head on because they would dodge me most of the time. But if I let them come like this and then swing from behind, where they've got a little bit of a blind spot back there, then they're very, very quick at dodging things.
sitting on the beach, it seems to me that if you have dragonflies flapping around, that sound, that fluttering of the
Yeah.
wings, is a get out of here to other insects. Is that true?
Nobody's ever proven that. It sure makes sense though, right? I mean, if you could like capture that sound and play it across your patio. I don't know of any studies that have tried to really assess that, but I like it. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I'd like to make a brief comment, not so much on the topic, but on the presenter. I happened to have occasion to meet Bob a good number of years ago, and that his wife, Linda, sitting back here, is my second cousin, and Linda's mom, Henrietta, is my first cousin.
It was great to see you. Yes.
How do you raise them if you're gonna do that? What do you feed them?
I feed them little blackworms, so I buy them from a biological supply house, and you can set up an aquarium with some water and some sand or a little bit of gravel in there and feed them goldfish food, and you can keep a culture of these blackworms going all year long, which I've done for most of the last 15 years. And they eat them right up. If you're only going to try to get them to emerge, then you would focus on the ones with the long wing pads like we saw, and you don't need to feed those. But for my taxonomic studies, very often I want to see if my key couplets are going to work for instars like 1, 2, and 3 backwards from the terminal ones. So I will rear younger nymphs just so I can examine them. So I feed those blackworms.
Blackworms, I've never heard of blackworms.
The genus is Lumbriculus. I don't know if there's a whole bunch of species or just one, no idea. But like Carolina's biological supply or someplace like that, you can order one. Of course, in the mosquito season, you can just go out and net some mosquitoes. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, you're a great group. Thanks the whole time.